This time on Watchers of Tomorrow, Groppler Zorn has a bad plan. Q's is better.
Hello everyone, welcome to Watchers of Tomorrow, the sci-fi review and critique show that is an ignorant, savage child podcast. My name is Gep, and I'm joined as always by my friend and co-host Dr. Izix.
Hi!
And we're finally there. Last episode, we bored you all to tears with background details of Next Generation, and everyone's going, hey, do this stupid show already, and here we are.
We finally made it! Yes, the first episode.
It's literally the comment I've gotten from every single friend since we started doing this show, is when are you doing my favorite Next Generation episode?
All in due time, folks. Yeah.
Well, it's not for a while, because nobody's favorite is in the first season, but, you know, we're getting there.
Datalore's pretty good, but I don't think it's anyone's favorite, really.
And definitely no one's favorite is what we're doing today, which is the two-parter first episode, second episode / pilot called Encounter at Farpoint.
Yes, part 1 and 2, and it has about as much material as a single episode.
Because it was supposed to be, which is fun.
Yes. So we'll just add some padding here, it's fine.
So this one was written by the old Star Trek standby team of DC Fontana and Gene Roddenberry, who we've talked about ad nauseum.
Mm-hmm. So they're still kicking ass at this point.
Both of them back for the first season. When we get on in the series, it's going to change things up. But for first season of TNG, you still have a lot of the old writers and big influential people from original series still working on the new show.
Indeed. And so some of the first couple seasons do kind of feel like TOS sort of episodes and plots and things like that, for better or worse, depending on the episode, of course. But slowly, as various interactions happened off screen, a number of folks kind of got fed up and just left. So,
yeah, some of the stuff are literal like redos of earlier concepts.
Yes.
So like we're gonna get to some of those in not too long. This one, not exactly. It's its own little thing. It's interesting. I mean, it's got some similarities to some original series plots.
Yeah, we do got a ultimate god being showing up, which was kind of a TOS staple.
But he doesn't different. I think it's interesting. We'll get to that, but it's interesting to compare the change in conceptual the conceptual stuff that's shown to you by the interactions that you're getting between like this god being and the earlier god beings, and the way that the crew reacts to them. A lot of stuff gets changed, and you can kind of do an interesting direct comparison between the way that Kirk and company would have interacted with this situation versus the way you're seeing the new crew do it. It's actually kind of a nice way to do this transition, to put the new crew in a situation that you've seen the old crew interact with, and to demonstrate the differences straight off, because you're saying, like, this is a break from what you're familiar with in some significant ways.
Yeah, so you're familiar with the old crew, but this one's going to react a little bit differently, because it's a new era of Trek, a new set of characters, and, things are not going to be the same. So, this is a wading into the pool to get used to it sort of situation.
And, of course, there was a bunch of behind-the-scenes drama. We talked about a bunch of that in the last episode, of how they didn't want to make this show in the first place. Everyone thought it was going to fail. It almost did. This particular episode, they kind of wrote the whole thing, had it going, had a kind of tight little mystery plot line going, and then someone went, "Hey, there's no action in this episode at all.
Yes.
There's no action, literally no action."
Yes, it's people standing around and going, at stuff.
So Gene Roddenberry went back and wrote in probably the single most memorable character in TNG, the single most memorable, interesting, favorite recurring character.
Yes.
And added a bit at the beginning that we're going to start with in a minute here, where the Enterprise has like a big fight scene, sort of dramatic thingy where you show off a bunch of the ship and what it can do and all that stuff. Then, of course, the episode grinds to a complete stop and then basically restarts. But, you know.
It's like, well, we're changing plots here. We got the other plot kind of idling in the background, but the main focus is this thing now. So hold on, folks.
Yeah.
It's going to be easy, too.
So there's a bunch of side characters in all of TNG stuff. There's a lot more sort of background characters, side stuff, other plots going on. So I'm really going to have to focus down to do our synopses in any kind of decent amount of time. So we're only going to deal with the 2 main guest stars that we have for this episode, which the first one
is Colmini.
You're just going to have fun pulling side characters out whenever you feel like it.
Occasionally, but I'll try to keep it reasonable. Yes. Who's our first guest here?
So first appearing in this episode is John DeLance, who people familiar with Star Trek are very familiar with as Q, the ultimate god being, trickster god Q.
Is in a very judgy mode this week.
And John DeLance was pretty well known, not a big name actor, but a little more around than some people who were on the main cast at this point, because he's been in a lot of TV shows and movies, and was pretty well known for appearing in Days of Our Lives for a decent stint. Yes. He won a couple of awards for that.
Yeah, like over 500 episodes. There's a reason, daytime television like that, has episodes titled episode 1.6140, just because there's so many of them.
So John DeLance is going to show up quite a few times. He's a main reoccurring character, one of the fan favorites. Envisioned almost like his character changes a little bit after the first season, but he's doing a good job. He does a lot with what he's given, which in this episode really isn't a lot.
It's like, here's what the words on the page, but really sell it, and he does. So
then the other main person that we have in this episode is Michael Bell, who's playing Zorn.
Groppler Zorn.
Yeah, Groppler I think is a job title.
Yes.
They never really go into it, but yeah.
But yes, Groppler Zorn, the most important side character in all of Star Trek and most beloved personality of perhaps any Star Trek ever. So, it's an important role.
He never shows up again, and everyone forgets he exists and thinks his name is Groppler.
Yes. But yeah, Bell here, is in lots of other stuff as well, including My Little Pony and Friends.
Yep.
So that's important.
The Smurfs, G.I. Joe.
Voltron, Defender of the Universe.
Yeah, any 80s cartoon.
Super Friends, he was in MASH for an episode, so there's that, too.
My personal favorite was Quackerjack from the Disney animated Darkwing Duck.
Oh, yeah. I missed that one. Yeah, he's been in stuff since back in the 50s, actually. But really picked up his acting stuff in the 70s through, I guess, kind of still, so...
And while not a side character per se, the other main person that we have in this episode is DeForest Kelley coming back for a nice little send-off side cameo as Admiral McCoy, head of Starfleet Medical.
So, McCoy is head of Starfleet Medical, and the next head of Starfleet Medical, some pretty big shoes to fill, but... oddly, they're both doctors from the Enterprise. Huh.
Hey, that's all the side people. And this is a two-parter, so we're going to jump in, see how concise we can make this thing. There's a lot of nothing happening, so maybe we won't do too bad. We'll see.
Yes. As I said, padding.
So, we meet Captain Picard, who is commanding the new Federation flagship, the absolutely massive Galaxy-class USS Enterprise D.
It's huge and large and like a mall.
It is the biggest, most complicated thing Starfleet has ever built.
And that's why it keeps breaking down throughout the series.
Yeah, they have a line of that in one of the other episodes. They are on their way to Farpoint Station, where their orders are to solve a mystery. Which is is delivered. I enjoy the cast. I enjoy the cast even in this episode, but my God, that is the clunkiest exposition scene I have ever seen in my life.
Yes. It's like, all right, so we're here. We're characters of Star Trek. Well, let's get in the Mystery Machine gang and solve a mystery.
Yeah. I'm like, well, this is a difficult task. Difficult? They just ordered us to solve the mystery of Farpoint Station. What? What is this line? Data? What's going on?
Yeah, good question.
Anyway, they want to simultaneously figure out how this station was suddenly built by people who have very little technological know-how or resources in the perfect place for the Federation to use as a jumping-off point to explore the greater part of the unexplored galaxy.
Oh, that is weirdly convenient. Could this be a trap? Is this a Romulan plot?
Romulans haven't shown up yet. Maybe Ferengi.
Okay.
They mentioned the Ferengi a lot.
Oh, yeah. The terrible and frightening.
They have no idea what they're doing with the Ferengi, but...
Yeah, the ultimate foe of the next generation.
So before they can go anywhere, though, Counselor Troy senses a powerful mind and a giant undulating wall thing just appears in space.
Yeah, well, that's something you don't see every day.
They are boarded by an Elizabethan soldier with armor and everything, who demands that they return to their own solar system.
Go away, Tremaline, or Tremaline? I forget his name.
Trelane.
Trelane, there we go. We've already had your episode. Go away.
This guy introduces himself as Q, a member of the Q, and you can call him Q.
Oh, what about your friends? Oh, they're also called Q. It's going to get confusing.
He freezes the helmsman just to show off, and then begins to run his way through human military history from a World War II-ish 50s era general who goes on about communism to a padded, really bulky, futuristic, drug-controlled military uniform.
Now that seems really awkward to wear and put on.
So the general gist is that Q believes humans are never going to change or evolve from their barbaric, savage, and dangerous roots, and so they should stop exploring the galaxy because they just are too bad at it, I guess. They're just going to come out here and fight everyone, and wars, and etc.
All right, all the humans off the ship. Worf, you're in charge.
Picard says, "You can't judge us for our past." He goes, "Oh, judge, that's a good idea," and then disappears.
Well, that's awkward and a little unsettling. Let's get the heck out of here.
Yeah, they decide to try an escape attempt where they go to maximum speed, which apparently could blow the ship up. And despite that, Q is able to outrun them very easily in his little space bubble. He has a space bubble in this episode.
Yes, it kind of looks like it's like filled with fire, sort of.
Yeah. So to safeguard the civilian population of the ship, Picard orders the emergency saucer separation, which is our big set-piece thing for the episode. The saucer section of the ship can just fly off, and then we get a really awkward-looking drive section of the ship.
Yes.
That, I guess, is the battle portion. Even though every time they show the Enterprise D fighting, all the weapons come from the saucer section.
Well, except the photon torpedoes, or at least they're not supposed to come from the saucer section. But yeah, the main phasers are on the saucer section, so yeah. The drive section technically does have some phaser bangs that you can see on like models and things like that, but I don't think they've been used other than like some really big special effects heavy episodes. So
So this is their big like set piece, oh my god, look what the ship can do thing. I think they use it 3 times if you count the movies.
Yes. I think that might bring it up to 4, actually. Because there's this episode, there's the one episode with the planet with the salesman hologram guy. Then there's the encounter with the Best of Both Worlds adventures there. And then Star Trek Generations.
All right, so it's 4. 4 times in total. 2 of them in the first season when they're still really trying to show off that it exists.
Yes, if anyone can remember any more, let us know.
So anyway, the saucer leaves with the civilians, and Picard waits around in his armored battle bridge thing to confront Q. Because Q's just too powerful to fight. They immediately surrender, and are transported to a weird anachronistic courtroom thing that they identify as a mid-21st century post-atomic age court called the Post-Atomic Horror.
So, we have this to look forward to, I guess. But
we'll all be dead. It's fine.
Hooray, radiation!
So Q enters, dressed in his iconic red judge robes.
With his sort of crazy hat thing going on. And
serving future judge realness here.
Yes. Floating in on his chair.
The bridge crew is on trial for the crimes of humanity, apparently. Tasha is having none of it because she came from a planet with things like this court, and oh my god, she's frozen now.
Well, this kind of sucks for Tasha. She's kind of pointing out, like, Federation folks and Earth and all that is pretty good, and she kind of has a horrible backstory, which we'll get into more later, but, this is kind of sucks for her, because we don't have the sickbay to thaw her out.
Yeah, so Picard demands they're treated fairly, like Q said they were going to do, which includes not randomly killing them. So he thaws out Tasha, and they're allowed to continue.
Oh, well, that works.
Now, what's an interesting part of the episode is Picard keeps denying, like, these don't have to do with us. We didn't do any of these things. We didn't start wars. We're amazing and evolved and all this junk.
Yeah.
Eventually, he's just forced to admit, we're savage and barbarous and all this stuff, but we are learning and improving and changing. So see if we're still this. He goes, ooh, a test. That's fun.
Yes.
That's fun. Q likes his games.
Yeah, and, this is very of kind of Kirk-ish sort of argument he's making, because, Kirk's always like, we might be barbarians, but we're not going to kill today, so,
Well, what's interesting is he starts out going, this is all in the past. We're evolved and civilized and all this junk.
Yes.
And Q is kind of going like, well, you still have to deal with this. This is your history.
Yeah, it's this, somebody's got to account for this.
It's like, it doesn't matter if you personally didn't do any of this stuff. Your ancestors did, your forebears did, your civilization did. Everything that got you to this point is this.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you say?
So, Q says that their Farpoint mission will be more of a test than they could possibly imagine, returns into the bridge where no one even seems to realize what's going on anymore. Just like, yeah, cool, we're back. Heading off to Farpoint. Saucer section's gone, not sure why, can't really remember.
And so, it's okay, not Chief O'Brien. We'll go pick him up later.
So finished with the excitement, we now move on to Farpoint, which is an advanced city-like station that is on an otherwise completely unadvanced world, like terracotta buildings.
Yes, so it's also like a mall, like the Enterprise, but they actually sell stuff in this one.
Yeah, they do. So here we see Commander Riker, who's waiting to join the Enterprise crew as first officer.
And his baby face.
Yeah, no beard yet. Baby face Riker. But like a true Starfleet officer, he's poking around for information, like how they built an advanced station up to Federation standards, perfect for human needs, just overnight.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Do you guys have replicators, some sort of resources we're not aware of? Anything to explain this?
Nope.
Maybe?
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. There's also a few other crew members here, like the ship's Dr. Beverly Crusher, her son Wesley, and Geordi shows up for a hot minute, but he doesn't really do anything yet.
I exist, says Geordi.
Riker tries to recruit Dr. Crusher into looking around with strange stuff, and she's like, you're making up things, and then suddenly the fabric that she's looking at magically changes colors. Like, maybe you're onto something.
Of course, though, in the future, we wouldn't expect there to be color-changing fabrics. That would be impossible.
Yeah. But this place magically has everything you ask for. Not like the ship, where it can magically produce anything you ask for.
Yes. It's like, oh, we just have a station-wide replicator. Cool.
The ship does arrive eventually before they have time to look into too much, and Riker beams up to half the Enterprise.
So, Captain, you seem to be missing part of the ship. Did everything go okay?
Yeah, he watches a clip show to get up to speed, which we also have to watch for some reason.
Well, I do have to say that for the Enterprise's clip show production values, they seem to be pretty much on par with the actual show, so meh.
And then Picard has Riker tested by performing a manual redocking to the saucer section, which he does fine. Everyone's impressed.
Though the velocity equals 0 stuff was confusing me because that means they would have stopped and the saucer section would have just hung out there.
Yeah, they don't know how things in space work.
Yes. Maybe there's some orbital mechanics going on here that didn't quite explain or mention. So anyway.
So Picard and Riker have a get to know you, where Picard tells his character quirk of not liking children. This is going to be a thing.
His greatest enemy.
And later in sickbay, we get a rundown to Geordi's visor, which lets him see in the electromagnetic spectrum, even though he was born blind.
So we got him with a superpower.
Yeah. It's nice. He's got a definite thing that does impact his life, and it's shown impacting his life, and he needs a special prosthesis in order to be able to see, but, you know, he functions normally. He can see better than most people in a different way, and it doesn't seem to really affect his ability to do stuff most of the time.
Yeah. Though there are some weird continuity quirks later that, like, wait, we've learned in the one episode he could see auras around androids, but he didn't spot that this person was an android. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, because, I don't know, it would be rude, maybe.
Yeah. He just doesn't pay attention to some things.
And finally, Data's escorting Admiral McCoy to a shuttlecraft. They talk about the Enterprise and how great of a ship name it is. And this is the end of the episode that's in the middle of the episode for some reason.
Yes. Well, McCoy, it's been a wild ride, but this is sort of your last chronological moment here.
Yeah.
Good luck in retirement.
I mean, it's nice. It's a really nice send-off, but my God, it should be at the end.
Yes. Well, you have to get rid of the hood, so have to send him off at this point.
So Q shows up again because they're wasting time. They need to figure out the thing, so he gives them a 24-hour deadline.
Enough character introductions, get to it. We have a plot to solve.
They poke around a bit. In addition to all the magical happenings, the base itself is constructed to Federation standards despite the planet not having access to much raw materials, but they do have excess power, so Riker believes maybe they're trading their excess power for the materials they need to build stuff, because I guess they could.
So I guess they make batteries locally.
Or they could, have a replicator, but I guess not. So Riker and Picard go down to investigate, along with Counselor Troy, which is the chance to introduce that Riker and Troy knew each other in a very awkward kind of way.
Yes, so Riker, can you read my brain? Because I'm sending you messages now, my Mzadi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they can telepathically communicate sometimes. Sometimes.
And mostly in this episode.
So they meet with the head of the city, Groppler Zorn. He's evasive, but more sort of usefully, Troy senses pain and despair coming from everywhere, basically. Not Zorn.
So not Zorn. Wait, is he abusing the bandy people that he's supposed to be in charge of? Is he some sort of horrible dictator?
Maybe. No one knows yet. He's definitely angry that they're investigating, which does suggest that they, are hiding something.
Yes. Stop asking questions. I just want to give you a thing and have some Starfleet people here. For reasons.
We then again stop looking into this plot and switch back to the ship where Riker checks out the holodeck, where we explain how holodecks function, which is that they make stuff for you to interact with so that they can film basically whatever they want. They're just giving themselves a narrative excuse to do whatever later on.
Yes, we want to do a period piece later. So either we have to go to a planet of cowboys again, or we do this, and this might make more sense. So
he also meets up with Data, where they talk about his mechanical nature and how he's basically wants to be human, Pinocchio stuff, etc.
And everybody loves robots.
Yeah, he and Riker have a kind of a fun dynamic in this episode that doesn't carry on. They stop being super best friends. But also, interestingly, knowing the future of the series and the friendship dynamics, Geordi and Data don't have a single scene together in this episode.
Well, Geordi's busy doing bridge stuff at this point, and Data's also on the bridge. Wait a moment.
I know. We'll talk about some more of the weird character stuff, because they don't have it figured out yet, obviously. Yes. It's the pilot. So they return to the planet. Tasha, Geordi, and Troy go to underground tunnels beneath the city. They're completely different than anything else they've seen, and when Troy opens her mind, she's overwhelmed with pain and despair to the point that Riker has to beam down to get them.
Well, these tunnels do kind of give me like an Aliens vibe, so So we might be having half the crew suddenly being killed off one by one. So just FYI, guys.
Meanwhile, we get a moment with Picard and Wesley, whose father was Picard's best friend before he died. His problems with children take over, though, and he kicks Wesley off the bridge for noticing an alert correctly.
Yes. Well, he told him not to touch anything, and then he touches something. It's like, oh, you broke my only rule, kid. Get out of here.
We're starting to get a little bit of the super kid dynamic that we're going to have later on through the series. You know, he's not awful. I've rewatched this series half a dozen times at this point, and Wesley bothers me less every time.
Yeah, it's sort of, I guess, part of the set dressing in a certain degree that he sometimes is more knowledgeable than everyone else, just suddenly. Yeah.
On the scale of annoying 80s, 90s teenage boy inserts in otherwise not teenage boy shows, Wesley is so far and away the least annoying.
Yes.
So, finally something happens. A giant unknown flying saucer thing is approaching the planet.
Wait a moment. Maybe this isn't aliens. Maybe it's V.
It does look a bit V-ish. As soon as it enters orbit, it scans the Enterprise and begins to fire on the worker settlement around Farpoint Station, but not the station itself. And interestingly, they go, "It's firing! Oh, armed weapons, wait!" It's not firing at the station, just the civilian population around the station. They go, oh, that's okay then.
Well, maybe there's like a weird Prime Directive exception here. It's like, we're technically in negotiations with these people for some stuff here. And so what we'd be negotiating over is technically something we'd have to protect until the negotiations are over. But them and their own city, nah, we don't have to care.
They kind of mentioned the Prime Directive at one point, yeah, but then it's just like, they're firing. Oh, not the station, though. Don't worry, it's fine. They're killing other people.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's because it's the middle of the day, everyone's supposed to be in the Farpoint Station right now, so they're just getting their homes exploded. You know?
Also, the away team, which is still in the tunnels, has lost communication because whatever's in the tunnels is preventing them from communicating. So they leave the tunnels and empty into the city that's being fired upon.
Oh, this is kind of annoying. We might die suddenly due to orbital bombardment. Good knowing, everybody.
So since Riker's already on the planet, Picard orders him to kidnap Zorn.
Yeah, as you do.
They do arrive in Zorn's office, and he's very agitated and doesn't like what's happening, but he's immediately beamed away by something else before they can ask him anything.
Dang it, Q! This isn't the time for games.
They get the away team back up, lock phasers on the other ship as a defensive option, and Q shows up and goes, you're going to shoot them. I knew you were going to shoot them, violent humans.
So I might as well just judge you as guilty right now, huh?
But they can't do anything. They can't even move the ship. Q's preventing them from doing anything. Because he's also trying to nudge them a little. He's like, you haven't solved the mystery, haha. Tell them go over there and investigate. Go look over there. I'm not helping.
Yes. It's like, well, he might have been kind of impressed that they've kind of actually been dragging their feet but still investigating this whole time. It's like, maybe they're feeling the pressure of this time limit thing. Maybe I should give them a bone.
So Riker leads the away team over to the other ship where they find tunnels exactly like what they found under Farpoint. Here, Troy feels hatred and anger towards the builders. And also they find Zorn being tortured in an energy field.
Well, I guess, we pissed off whoever's in charge here.
So Troy realizes that all this anger and pain and other stuff she's been feeling is only from one thing. Not like, a ship crew.
Yeah. Wait, the pieces, they're coming together.
And as they free Zorn from his torture prison, the ship begins to glow. Q appears again on the Enterprise and goes, okay, shoot it now, save your crew, oh my god. But they're returned by the ship. The other ship just beams them back.
Picard's like, what's up? And they're like, no, Q didn't bring us over, so you don't have to, go with whatever deal you just made with him.
So Q keeps trying to goad them into attacking, but Picard's figured it out now. And he asks Zorn what's going on. He reveals that they helped a creature just like the one that's attacking them, that can turn energy into matter. So they beam some energy down to Farpoint and let it eat all it can, and it transforms away from a city into being a giant space jellyfish.
And now we have two giant space jellyfish kind of hanging out and touching tentacles.
The other ship turns into a jellyfish. They're blue and pink jellyfish, and they hold hands, and fly away.
Well, that was kind of lewd, but neat.
Q is possibly disappointed they solved his puzzle, but he also definitely wanted them to and helped them do it. Q's interesting in this episode.
Yes. Now, I'll talk about it much more later, but I do have a sort of fan theory about Q, especially in some key episodes here. But we'll save that for later.
But, Q did agree to let them go on their merry way, so he leaves and the ship heads off for the great unknown.
Hooray! Let's go explore that final frontier finally.
So yeah, this is interesting I think the Q dynamic in this is really interesting. Because like I said, you can kind of compare a little bit with how the crew's handled things. Because Kirk's run into a couple of god entities like this.
Yes.
And it's always very antagonistic.
The god entity wants to mess with them or keep them or force them to do something. And he's just like, no, we're not going to do it.
And it doesn't turn antagonistic at any point. They go, you know what? This guy's too strong to fight. And we're just going to have to deal with it and see how it turns out. Instead of the Kirk approach, which is nothing is too strong to fight. We just need to figure out how they're doing this thing and then take it out.
Yes, but this time we don't have a Greek building we can shoot or a mirror we can have them break or something like that. Just this guy's pretty dang powerful and he's just totally beyond us, so we can't even.
Yeah, Q's mom doesn't show up.
Yes. And so it's sort of like, well, what are our options? None. Well, I guess we just got to surrender. All right.
So I think the whole god entity thing is kind of an interesting way to start because, yeah, there's been a ton of comparisons to Shalane, and he's kind of similar. He never comes across as that cruel.
Indeed.
He tortures people for fun, but not in a way where he's ever going to actually let someone die.
Yeah, I'm going to sort of push people around and make it seem like everyone's doomed or going to die, but no one actually expires here. So it's kind of all fun and games to a certain degree.
There's only one episode in the next season, I think, where Q ever lets someone get killed, and that's a completely different point. It actually ties into his character in this season quite well, in a weird way.
Indeed. We'll get to that when it kind of comes up.
We'll get to that later. But I think what's interesting is I haven't quite noticed, really, the first couple times I watched this episode. But I think the more and more we talk about this stuff now, I'm viewing it through a little bit of a different lens, watching it at the moment with all the stuff that we're talking about in the US, like this year and last year. Largely having to do with the historical context of the United States, which you can really view any Federation ship in these shows as just a stand-in for the United States, basically. Almost straight up.
So, if we're going to be looking at the totality of that history, then we got to also include the history of the United States, then.
A lot of Q's arc in this episode is you need to deal with your own past. Mm-hmm. Because he shows up and goes, you guys are violent and savage as a species. Your history shows me this. And Picard keeps going, no, we're not, until eventually he's basically forced to admit, yeah, this was our history. It is something that we shouldn't and can't ignore. And by doing so, we are going to just keep repeating the same mistakes. But because we're willing to look at it, learn from it, and admit it, we don't have to, and we actually can improve.
Indeed. Yeah, knowing that past lets us avoid repeating it.
And I think it's an interesting one on the message side. I really like that message. Mm-hmm. Don't ignore the bad parts of your history, because the more you try to just ignore them and get rid of them, you become shameful of them. It's kind of an interesting dynamic. Like the more you try to push away the parts of your history that you're uncomfortable with, the more it just turns into this weird kind of shame, and then the more you want to push away and punish anything and anyone that's associated with that shame.
Indeed. So it goes from, well, we just don't want to talk about this, to we're going to punish you for bringing it up, to we're just going to punish you because you might bring it up.
And even not just bringing it up, like some theories around like racism in the United States have to do with the idea that just the existence of people in the US is a constant reminder of our violent history that we're trying to sweep under the rug.
Indeed.
Just the fact that people exist, or the fact of certain kinds of class and racial inequalities, demonstrate the way that we dealt with things in the past.
And so that last one, becomes then, we're going to punish you because your race suggests that, we have to remember this in some fashion, so we're going to punish you because of that.
Yeah, we will punish you for existing because your very existence reminds us of the fact that our society has done terrible things to you and people like you.
So, because I feel upset, I'm going to do horrible things to you.
And because we refuse to deal with our past and history, this keeps coming up again and again and again. And I think, in a weird way, in a weird roundabout way, the episode is demonstrating this in and of itself by the things that they had to do to undermine their own message for public consumption. Because the entire episode is about, or not the entire episode, but Q's section of the episode, the Q Picard arc of the episode, is about having to come to terms with your own violent past and the horrible things that have gotten you as a society to the point that you're at now, whether or not you feel you've improved as a people. Like, you still have to deal with the fact that this is something that your people and society went through before. It's something that you did. Your ancestors did this. The way your ancestors dealt with it advantaged or disadvantaged certain populations based on their actions in the past, and you have to deal with that now.
Yes. Because, if not now, when?
They mentioned two things. They mentioned the fact that humans go to war sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And they mentioned this completely made-up future courtroom thing.
Yes.
Those are the crimes that are listed as humanity having done in this episode.
Yeah, there's, of course, much more out there, but these are the ones that we talk about here.
Well, what's interesting is they show military history and go, war is bad. War is just unexcusably bad. Which, you could have some nuance in there, but most people can agree, like, killing each other en masse for territorial disputes and things, generally bad.
Yes, it's something to avoid if possible.
But then the other thing is they made up a future time in which an oppressive regime was doling out unfair punishments and had a corrupt justice system. That's basically the other crime we're seeing, is an overly corrupt justice system that's obviously doling out unfair punishments for the amusement of people.
Yes, justice is a form of entertainment as opposed to, justice.
And you don't have to make that up. That is something that's definitely happened throughout various parts of human history.
Indeed.
This kind of corruption has happened even if you completely restrict yourself to the history of, Europe and the general West, as we think of it. You could definitely find examples of this from that history, and you could put that in without having to worry about, calling out another culture or something. You'd still be talking about your own.
Yes.
You don't want to, because you don't want to actually look at your own history. Mm-hmm. You want to make up one.
Yes, we need a sci-fi stand-in so that we don't actually step on any toes here. Any toes, even our own, because that would make us uncomfortable.
Because you're not going to bring up slavery. You're not going to bring up racial inequality, which is even something that 60s era Star Trek tried to deal with. Mm-hmm. I think the amount that they were successful and unsuccessful varied greatly, and there's a lot of nuanced debate to have around it that I, as the palest dude in the room, am not equipped to have very well. But they tried.
Indeed.
This is completely ignoring our history of racism, our history of class oppression, our systems of society that disadvantage some people and advantage others to the point of absurdity and death. We made up a thing. We have to make up a new atrocity that will happen sometime in our future, ambiguous human future, that we can then say we have overcome, instead of any of the innumerable things that we could talk about that are or have actually happened that we can say that we've overcome. Because in theory, they have overcome all of those things as well. but we can't mention them without the audience possibly feeling bad, because then you had to think about all the horrible stuff that we actually did do. So by ambiguizing it to this point, you're kind of both undermining the message that you're trying to have, but also pointing out the fact that it exists because you had to do this to sanitize it for television,
yes.
so that nobody had to think about our own history, which is the very thing that you're trying to critique people for not doing.
Yes. So it's a kind of a double reverse backflip to that emphasizes the point. Because unlike what some folks would like to claim that racism ended in 1965 and then everyone was forgiven forever, the real world's not that simple or magical. So yeah.
And then of course I guess the main thing that they're showing that they've changed is they're not going to solve every situation violently.
Indeed. We're a lot more chill here. We got phasers, but we're not going to use them unless we have to, sort of thing, And even then, we're going to just kind of, in this case, tweak them a little bit to send an energy beam as opposed to a death beam.
But even not solving the situation violently, we're not going to talk about why the Federation gets to have all of the money and resources and whatever it is they have in the future that these people don't and had to enslave an alien to get a piece of.
Indeed. This planet that's, not a Federation member, sure, but is, definitely kind of, known to them and just kind of, well, we're poor and we don't got anything, but maybe we can bribe the Federation to supporting us, sort of thing.
We're not going to go into the, what would have happened if they hadn't done this, if these people hadn't enslaved this alien and captured the energy being in order to make it build a Federation outpost for them. Would the Federation have ever come here? Would they be on the map at all?
Yeah.
They imply that the Federation is now going to build an actual starbase here, but they don't really go into that anyway. Would they have otherwise?
That's a good question. Probably not. They might have gone to some place where, they didn't have to deal with any neighbors, but I guess they have a working relationship now, so it's like, might as well.
So you really could go deeper on this, which is something that you can criticize this era of Star Trek for constantly.
Yeah, just bringing up something, but not really going to as much depth and, solution options as possible.
Well, it really does boil down to the political leaning of the time that we're still dealing with a bit now, but it was definitely very present in the late 80s, early 90s era of this liberal individualism. Not liberal as in leftist, but liberal as the political, neoliberal individualism of thinking systems function and not critiquing them. Because the system functions. We never in episodes like this get an examination or critique of the systems at play.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to look at why the people on this planet thought that this action was necessary, what drove them to do this, why they thought the best option that they had was to capture an apparently sentient creature and force it into doing things for them to gain the attention of the Federation, which is the entity with all of the power and resources in this scenario. We don't look at why they thought that was a good option, or what their circumstances were like before that made it a good option. We simply look at the fact that they did it, go, that was wrong, and now we are magnanimously here to fix it.
Indeed, and Groppler Zorn is sort of the stand-in for everyone that was involved in this project here, and so he, the individual, is the one who gets punished, and the alien does that.
Yeah, the alien kidnaps the one dude and punishes him. There's some talk of how the society around the builders and people were fired on. There's casualties, and we have one scene of Dr. Crusher organizing a medical team to go down and help, which I guess is their humanitarian aid portion. This is why it matters that we just sat here and let them shoot people and didn't even think about protecting the city until later when Q literally stopped us from doing so.
So, we'll heal them later. We just can't intervene directly, I guess.
So that's kind of a big critique that you get, especially from newer viewers of of this Star Trek era is, yes, they are giving some interesting messages. Yes, it is a well-written show generally. Like, even this, widely regarded as one of the weaker episodes of the weaker season, it's good TV.
Yeah.
It's enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, there's some good stuff going on here, and it doesn't like bug you or anything like that, so that's good.
Is it amazing? No. Would this be a pretty good episode of almost any other show from this era? Yeah. The frustrating thing is, this show gets so much better than this later.
So it's all like, there's potential here, but I need more because I've seen later episodes, guys.
But you aren't discussing it. This is not one of their fun time romp episodes. This isn't the we're gonna have fun in the holodeck episode. This is supposed to be we are solving a mystery. We're looking into the implications of this thing. We're trying to balance looking into this fraught political situation while trying to negotiate with these people. None of it's really handled in a nuanced or examinatory way. It's just plopped on the table there.
Indeed. Though I guess I could make an argument that the crew being kind of new to working with each other sort of demands a certain amount of awkwardness, but even still, it kind of goes beyond that.
Well, there's a difference between the awkwardness, because I do enjoy that. People constantly complain about TNG not having character development, but look at how awkward everyone is around each other now. Like, they don't get along well. They don't know what to make of each other. They don't have working together down quite yet, which makes sense because it's a completely new crew. Most of them haven't even met each other before today. And
those who have kind of complicated relationships. Like Troy and Riker is like, well, we used to date. We don't anymore. And Beverly and Picard, well, you kind of brought my husband home. His body at least. That was kind of awkward. Are you going to be okay here? Sure, yeah.
Now, there's a difference between showing the new working relationship and not discussing any of the implications of what you're doing at all.
Yes. Maybe on their old ships they didn't. Maybe that's why this is the Enterprise. They actually eventually learned that maybe we should think about our actions.
I think they do more and more of that as we go through the first season.
Yes.
So overall, they didn't dig enough into this to do anything but undermine their own point to a certain extent.
Yes. In a weird and very of the time sort of way, I guess. So, Gepwin, I have a question of sorts for you. What sort of court is that we see Q running?
I don't know law things. I don't know law things as well.
Is it
like a Judge Dredd style court?
Is it a civil court or a common law court?
Or
civil law court, sorry.
I'm not sure. It seems like there's some sort of state authority overseeing this thing.
But that's why I'm being kind of tricksy with these terms here, and it actually took me a while to sort of sort them out myself. But there is a difference between a civil law court and a common law court that isn't what sort of this is a civil matter sort of court, but a civil court actually is based on a certain sort of system of court. Like in the United States, we have a common law court where it's very adversarial, where you have a judge who stands as a sort of arbiter of the rules of the court, but is not directly involved there and is supposed to be impartial, and the jury is going to decide the outcome, again, in an impartial fashion, with the prosecutor and defense playing off each other to try to push the argument about their position. But a civil court is a more inquisitive sort of court where, it's like, okay, so we got the judge or panel of judges here, and we are going to be active in the sort of interrogation of the facts and situations here in order to come to a conclusion about things here, which very much seems that more in the mold of what Q is doing here, because there's no prosecutor, there's no jury, unless you sort of assume, his one statement about judge, jury, and executioner is, being a weird, specific recasting of the common law court. But yeah, what is very much more the civil law court. Now, some people might be asking, it's like, we keep saying civil law, but this isn't like a tort case. This is not someone suing someone. Of course it's not. Civil law in this case talks about the basis of the law system, which the civil law court systems are present in countries that have a Roman or French Napoleonic law codes. That it's basically a different sort of tradition. So it's sort of the background is, just different than what folks in the United States are used to. Now, folks in, countries like these, it's like, yeah, they've seen plenty of the United States system and the common law sort of stuff there. But, the system they actually live under is, a different sort of way of going about how they organize the court there. And so you get a situation that, for a U.S. viewer, this seems like an outrageous thing, but someone, say, from France or Nigeria or Uruguay might be like, oh, no, this is a little differently here. Actually, I'm not sure about those specific countries. Uruguay might be common law. I forget. Anyway, but this is like a little more familiar, but, in terms of TV courts, this is outrageous. But another sort of interesting thing about these civil law courts systems is that they do tend to be guilty until proven innocent. They still have to go through the whole process in order to prove that case, of course. But there is a different sort of framing of how things are going at that point that is not quite being applied here, other than, saying yourselves are guilty until we, or we'll shoot you here, sort of moment there. But it is kind of interesting sort of looking at it from this frame that, this is a way that the court is talked about and presented is very American, but the underlying system is, of a very, present in elsewhere in the world sort of systems there. And so also that's kind of how some of the courts work in some parts of the world here. So just FYI, though, would tend to be with less machine guns, though.
It's another one of those. It's another one of those interesting places where they definitely have just taken something that's non-default from the American perspective. And they didn't go into much. They don't go into how this system functions. You can see that it's a corrupt system because the judge is mean to them and has complete power of life and death and things that we can't tolerate in a functioning legal system. But they don't go into how the system is supposed to function. Is this one that could function well in a place where someone knowledgeable is supposed to be able to come to what actually occurred in the matter at hand and render a judgment from that information, which in some ways could be better than some of the stuff we do in our law-based court system, where if there's a small clerical error in your paperwork, you're free just because that's how it functions. Yeah. You could make an argument that there could be better systems, but because this is just presented as, this is a courtroom with no jury, and we as Americans go, well, a courtroom with a jury is the fundamental to all law across the world, therefore this is bad.
Indeed. Yeah, this is without even getting into some more specific sort of law systems there, like religious courts as well, which are, vary by religion.
Which, of course, this isn't just another place where, and sci-fi does this a lot, they just say, here's something that's recognizably non-American.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, bad.
It's alien. It's bad and alien.
Even though, as you pointed out, this is a way that law does function in other parts of the world. In fact, there's a line in there where he says, this is when you agreed with the line from Shakespeare, kill all the lawyers. He says it was done as if the entire world had one unified court system, which I guess they did at this time period because they mentioned United Earth.
Yes.
But they are kind of ignoring different cultures, different ways of doing things, anything that's recognizably non-American. Even the fact that you make this implicit assumption that the new UN and the United Earth would be based completely on American politics, the way that it seems to be presented. So again, yeah, like you point out, it's another place where they're not examining the systems at play. They're simply presenting you with, here is a corrupt courtroom in a recognizably non-American style court, which makes it bad.
Indeed. It's something you do not recognize, but do recognize at the same time, but different. So fear it. And be concerned for our characters here. There is maybe another court, though, this might resemble in some ways, but that's more because it's the sort of charges that are being pushed forward here. So are you familiar with the International Criminal Court?
Oh, vaguely.
So it's a court that it's a permanent tribunal. So, again, sort of expert sort of situation here of judges who are assembled to prosecute folks and other things for genocide, crimes against humanity, that sort of thing, and as well as nominally crimes of aggression, but that can't functionally happen under the current system or things. It's not. I didn't delve too much into that, but just one of those sort of like, this is technically on the list, but we don't know how to do it sort of things. It's a court that has been signed on to by numerous countries around the world, but not all of them. So, the United States is sort of associated, but not an actual member of it, sort of thing. So, it's like, we are curious, but we're not going to actually be subject to this. So, and so, but it's a body that was assembled that maybe we should, I don't know, make sure that people that are committing genocide actually see some consequences for their actions, as opposed to living in retirement, dying of old age. Like guys like Pol Pot or something like that. And it's sort of like it's something that is very much this is a court assembled to address things that are bigger than an individual's general conduct. Someone might be charged under the laws of their country for corruption or whatever while they were the dictator ethnically cleansing their people or something like that. But their country's not going to be able to easily charge them because when you're in charge of the country, you tend to make the laws so that you can basically do what you want. And so, the dictator of the country is not going to be, in the long run, subject to the laws unless they get unlucky. And usually then there's very swift justice in a very, perhaps unjust sort of a court. There is and so you got this body that's sort of like, well, this is going to be going beyond the laws of these countries in order to make sure that there is still some addressing of this sort of thing. So it doesn't just kind of get, well, you're not in power anymore. That's good enough sort of situation.
Oh, you're saying it's a lot like an international legal court that deals with giant, like, war crimes against humanity style things, because that's essentially what they're being accused of. Is you've committed well, so many crimes against humanity should stop interacting with other people.
Yes, you need to go sit in your corner and never bother anyone ever. We're giving you an infinite life sentence.
It's kind of an interesting one on that side. Like we are definitely going to get into more Q stuff later.
Mm-hmm.
But from what we're seeing in this episode, he isn't trying to keep humanity away.
Yeah,
he's trying to actually help them improve enough that it'd be okay if they kept going.
This is very much a test, but it's a test that is. This is something that I believe you can actually overcome. So don't disappoint me, sort of thing. But if I act like I'm of that sort of perspective, then it's not going to fly maybe with my bosses. So, but still, come on, guys.
Because he definitely does keep helping them.
Mm-hmm.
He keeps helping them and helping them, which is not something of, I don't want you to succeed.
Yes. But sometimes his help is awkward and frustrating. but yeah, I'll still get into some of my ideas about Q as we sort of run into him a little bit further on, because so I suspected this episode's already getting to that time, eh?
Yeah, we kind of need to just leave the Q stuff, because there's a bunch of Q theories you could do.
Yes. There's time for them later. I could talk about Justice, but we have a whole episode about that later this season.
Yeah, we do.
Yes.
We have some very good episodes about Justice.
Yes.
So, okay. In the interest of this starting off our new season without things going into 4 or 5 hour episodes, I think it's time for the Galaxy's favorite game show! Woo!
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Galaxy's favorite game show. I hope you are all still as beautiful as you were last time we met, because you are really beautiful, folks. Anyway, we're going to get to handing out some prizes. The season might be new, the series might be new, but we can definitely be racking up, totaling up some points here. And the first prize to hand out for those points is the Sufficiently Advanced Aliens prize, which goes to Q, naturally, because he's just so beyond us, we can't even with this magic stuff he's doing. What does he win, Kepwin?
Q wins a magic rune staff and a pointy hat. Like, Q loves props. Q never does Merlin. Q should do Merlin.
I think I'd like that. Oddly enough, there was a possibility he could have done it, but they decided to go with Robin Hood later. So, anyway.
Yeah, King Arthur would have been an interesting one on that episode.
Indeed. Probably better, too. Anyway, their second prize is the Mockery of Justice prize, which goes to the course of the post-atomic horror, because just japers, folks, this is a ridiculous situation here. And, what do they win, Gepwin?
The post-atomic horror courts win a reality TV contract, because, like, as much as I don't love courtroom reality TV, I think it could be much improved with a bunch of angry peasants in the background yelling and screaming and laughing every time Judge Judy says something.
Well, I'd say that there's a certain amount of the audience I know of folks and friends that enjoy their Judge Judy who kind of do that as is. So just give them tickets, and there we go. Our third and final prize is the Psychic Hotline prize, which goes to Troy for having her linking up with the giant aliens and their whole emotions, happening intensely to kind of move the plot along. What does she win, Gepwin?
Troy wins a tinfoil hat. You could keep she's doing the plan for Troy, which was to make her the cool, kind of wise, for her years figure that gives good advice and things, but they made her emote too much. So just give her the hat, blocks off the emotional thing. She doesn't have to cry every time she does anything. And then they can let her keep giving cool advice and stuff as a character without completely neutering her, because they don't know what to do with her after she doesn't literally break down crying every time she feels someone else's emotions.
Indeed. I do think that in this episode, her hairstyle might be amplifying some of those emotions, but that's just a fan theory. Anyway, that's all I got to hand out this week, Gepwin. Go on and take us away.
Yes, thanks to our new set of contestants for a new season. Thank you all for joining us on the Galaxy's favorite game show.
Woohoo!
All right, next we got our first open remake.
An open remake? A remake of the Infinite Vulcan?
No, unfortunately, we don't get one of those.
Drat. Foiled again.
There's several episodes that are definitely just sort of light redos of original series concepts. Something that maybe they could do better, something they're recycling, etc., etc. This is literally the same episode.
Yep.
Even the name is the same. The position in the series is the same. Because episode 2 of original series was Naked Time, where everyone gets drunk on space water and acts weird.
Yes.
Like, it was a while ago. We weren't doing very good shows back then. I don't know if I'd recommend you listen to it.
But if you want to see some vintage, Watchers of Tomorrow, for your ears there, check it out, and then check us out next week. Yeah?
But that's like the one where Sulu's doing sword fights in the corridor. A lot of famous stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Doing the same thing.
Yeah, there might be some sword fights in this one, but they're off screen. Anyway.
Oh.
Yeah.
So next time, the crew of the Enterprise is getting drunk in The Naked Now.
Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow, nudity in Star Trek. You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreader, Digital Podcast, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Mori's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that you, that is now, no longer exists.